We are live now.
Hi, everyone. I'm very excited to be here today. This is another short lesson, the third one for 1,000 Faces. My name is Marlene, and I welcome you all of you who are joining live stream, or even if you're watching this on replay. We try to share information, so even if you want to go back to some of the things we discuss here, this will be available for you to study after. The recording started. So hi, everyone, welcome. As we move on to diving into this Web3 world, we've looked at different aspects of the Web3 world. We've discussed a bit how to create wallets, NFTs, and so now I want to dive into the next topic. I've mentioned this a few times in the previous lessons, blockchain. And while it might get technical in some aspects, it's good to understand. And the reason why I give this lesson is because we're still at the beginning of this new revolution. And so to dive into it and understand how it's working, we're still the pioneers in a way. So it will be an easier transition for us to understand how it's working. If you think about when the internet started, late 90s, and it came to the public use, not everyone could understand how it was working, but the people who at the beginning took time to understand how it was working could really make better use of this technology. And look at us now. Anyone can use even the internet, even if nowadays not everyone is fully understanding the technology behind it. But since now we're still at a time where we're still the pioneers, it's important to understand how it's working. So blockchain is a bit complex, so we decided to do this in a 3-part series, and they will complement with each other. So let me share my screen and let's get started. Okay. View slideshow. Okay. If everyone can see well, welcome for another short lesson. So what are we covering today? I want to go over some of the definitions of blockchain. As you can see, it's a complex subject. So it's good to have different definitions to understand what it is exactly. I want to go back a bit to the origin history of blockchain, and then we will start discussing some of the properties of blockchain. So yeah, this is the first representation of blockchain. It's different users with different devices connected to each other. So let's dive into what exactly it means. So I got some definitions, different definitions from the internet. For example, the Merriam-Webster dictionary says that blockchain is a digital base containing information that can be simultaneously used and shared within a large, decentralized, publicly accessed network. So there's a lot of key terms here. It's decentralized, still simultaneously, it's we can call it live, and it's a matter of distribution and sharing, and it's access to the public. Another definition by Adam Hayes says, blockchain is a digital database or ledger. We will use these terms a lot. So it's a digital database or ledger that is distributed among the nodes of a peer-to-peer network. So again, this idea of distribution and the nodes between peer-to-peer. So there's this sharing aspects. And another way to see blockchain is blockchain uses cryptography to secure transactions taking place between the nodes in blockchain network. So I will go over what exactly nodes mean. It's a more technical term. But for now, let's try to understand what it means. So it's a cryptography to secure transactions. So there's the word also secure. And I want to dive into one particular definition here. It uses cryptography. So cryptography, what is cryptography? This is a word that some of us have heard before for sure, not necessarily related to technology. So cryptography is the art of writing or solving codes. It's a method of securing data from unauthorized access. So I want to make a bit of highlight into this definition, because by understanding this and the origin of this, we can start understanding how blockchain comes from the beginning of history of mankind. So let's dive into cryptography. So the first use of cryptography is in the 1900s before Christ. It was found in the tomb of a nobleman called, I will probably not say the name correctly, Numateo 11 in Egypt. And what they discovered here was that the language that they used, the hieroglyphics, were not the same ones that were used in all the previous tombs when they were doing, when they were constructing this. So historians have looked into that and understand that it was not necessarily at this moment to have a secret message, but it was just to put a message in a different format that was used to it. So this is like the first moment where cryptography was kind of born, we can say. A bit more recent is in the 100 before Christ, Julius Caesar. He was with his army in times of war. He was conveying secret messages using cryptography, and this was used to send to his army general during periods of war. Like this, even if the messenger was caught in during the transport from place A to place B, the enemies couldn't figure out, or would take a lot of time to figure out what the message was, because there's war, there's strategy. So this is like the first use of cryptography. So it's a message that cannot be read by the naked eye. And we've seen this in different cultures, in Greece, Egypt, even in the World War, how it was widely used for military and to send messages across, especially before, where there was the communication between different groups required transport from literally from place A to place B. So it was a way to keep messages secure and secret. So this kind of makes us understand what the origins of blockchains are. So let's now dive into cryptography into the digital age. So if we look at the history in the 1990s, there was already the concept of distributive computing. It was around since 1990. And then we cannot talk about the origin of a blockchain without going back to the origin of Bitcoin. So in 2009, Satoshi Nakamoto created Bitcoin and introduced the concept of a blockchain to incarnate a decentralized ledger maintained by anonymous consensus. So we can say that the moment where blockchain was brought to life was by this anonymous group led by Satoshi Nakamoto, and the technology they were using behind Bitcoin was blockchain. In the 2011, 2012, it was the deployment of cryptocurrency in application related to cash. So now we're talking of the transactions, of using blockchain as transactions. And it goes into the 2 years after, 2012, 13, the transfers and digital payment between systems. Then it started coming into the financial market, and so this technology was started to use to make a transaction between financial markets, and it can be used with cash transactions or even other types of transactions. And in 2014, 2015, it was the birth of smart contracts. This has, in the timeline, I would mention here the birth of Ethereum and other blockchains. And then from then, it has been moving on to using blockchain with different network solutions of transactions from peer-to-peer until further where we are today. So I would just summarize the evolution in this evolution in a different image. So the blockchain 1.0, we can say it's currency with the birth of Bitcoin. After it's smart contracts, and we will talk a lot more about smart contracts and the dApps in the next lesson. But for now, it's to understand the first, it was a currency, smart contracts, blockchain 3.0, it's dApps. dApps means decentralized applications. And blockchain 4.0, where we're heading to, is industry. So it's a different way to visualize the evolution of blockchain. So now that we understand where the birth of blockchain is from, let's talk about some of the 5 properties of blockchain. It's distributed, it's encrypted, inclusive and transparent. It's historical, and it's immutable. So let's go through each one of these ones. Distributed, what does this mean? For blockchain, it's a protocol that is established a set of rules in the form of distributed mathematical computations that ensures the integrity of the data exchange among as many devices without having to have a third party in the middle. So what this means is it distributed has to do with the mathematical computations that the data can be distributed among different nodes without having an intermediate in between them. It's a lot of complicated words, but if we try to understand it, it's this communication between different devices. It can be 2 devices, or it can be 1,000 devices. And the technology to do these connections is mathematical computations. So this is the first property of blockchain. Second one, encryption. We've heard this word a lot. And this has to do with what we talked about, cryptography, where there's a secret coded message. So there's a coded message, and the technology that blockchain is using, it's a 2-key system. So for example, someone writes a text in the normal language that is used. Then there's a key that's called the encryption. So this text gets encrypted into an encrypted text where it's the same message, basically the same message as the original one, but to the naked eye, it's transformed. It cannot be recognized. And this is done through a first key of encryption. Then when the receiver receives this message, they have to have a key of decryption. And with this key, the message that's encrypted goes back to its original form. So it's a 2-way to secure the system with these 2 keys. The third property of blockchain is inclusive and transparency. So what does it mean? In a public blockchain, anyone can view all the transactions that reside on the network. There's not one person or institution that can hide a transaction. Blockchain is an open source. Anyone anywhere in the world can have access to it and can dive into it. And the reason why it's the word inclusive there is because it's really no matter of boundaries of origin, location, or where you're coming from, or where which service or area you're working at, you can have access to all the information. And it's very transparent. The fourth property of blockchain is a distributed ledger representing a network consensus of every transaction that has ever occurred. The blockchain must preserve its entirety. Storage matters. So with a blockchain, one of the main aspects is that there's traceability. This is kind of what this is saying. So there's traceability. From point A, there's a transaction. When there's a user that does a certain specific thing, a signature, a transaction, there's a traceability to this, and this cannot be altered. This cannot be changed. So we talk a lot about ownership and data security in blockchain. And the reason why is because there's a traceability of all the actions that are happening. So there cannot be an entity or a person or an institution cannot erase an aspect. Everything has to be traced. So to go back to the real ownership, and everything is there. All the information is there. We just have to go back and find it, but everything is there, it's traced. And the last property of blockchain, to wrap up, is immutable. I already alleged a bit to this, but the technology of blockchain, it works that within a matter of minutes, it's quite live, I would say. The transactions are verified, cleared, and they're stored. Storage is very important. So when this happens, there is a node that is created. So there's a transaction that's happening, and you create a node. When you create this node is linked to another node. And when these two nodes are linked, this is why it's called a chain. And this chain cannot be broken, because once the nodes are linked, it cannot be changed anymore. It cannot be edited. And to look at each block, they must refer to the previous node that is attached to. So there's like we can say a permanent timestamp that stores the value of each information in the node. And so with this model of the chain, of the blockchain, it cannot be changed, because the moment you want to change one piece, you have to go through the whole chain, and this old chain, it cannot be changed. So yeah, these are the 5 properties of blockchain. So today it was a more theoretical way to look at blockchain. We will go next lesson to look at smart contracts and a bit of how maybe the mathematical computation is working. So for all of you who are watching live, I want to ask you 2 questions. And the first 2 people to answer the questions correctly, please post your answers on the general chat channel in our Discord, Thousand Faces Discord, and you will get a prize. So the first question: what was born first? I'm saying born in quotation marks. Is it a digital currency or the blockchain? It's a bit of a tricky question, but if you followed a bit the history, you should be able to answer this question. And the second question this is an easy one. I gave you 5, you have to give us 3 properties of blockchain. So we will look up for your answers in our Discord channel, and I want to thank you all for watching me. Have a good one.